Oh, it's another video with wrestling nerd rage ranting about fantasy booking not fulfilled in a multi-billion-dollar television production. But someone in WWE has some legitimate gripes, and they might want to kick someone's head off over it. Drew McIntyre deserves a lot better than what he's getting at WrestleMania 41. I'm Kevin Kellum. This is Sportskeeda Wrestling. Let us know what you think of Drew McIntyre and his role at this year's WrestleMania. Let us know who else you think maybe isn't getting what they deserve at this year's WrestleMania in the comments below. Also, hit the like button and subscribe for more content just like this. It seems quite clear Drew McIntyre, at least on camera, isn't happy with his direction going into WrestleMania 41. As you may or may not know, depending on whether or not you've been following WWE closely on the road to WrestleMania, McIntyre is now on the blue brand of SmackDown. And the man he's slated to face at WrestleMania 41 is none other than Damian Priest, another star who has been one of the pillars of WWE's men's division for the past year or so. But it somehow feels like possibly maybe one of the least emphasized matchups heading into this year's big showdown in Vegas. These are two former world champions who don't have a match that features the marquee status of other matches being presented this year. Let's address the match itself between Drew and Damian. From a storytelling standpoint, it's not a nothing match. Please, if you're trying to call it that, you're wrong. Anyone claiming that this match has no past developments behind it is conveniently not paying attention. If Drew and Damian are not in the title picture, they are going to make the most of it because they're still on WrestleMania. And if you claim they are buried, you don't know what that word means. Someone who is buried likely isn't on WrestleMania. Drew and Priest at this year's Mania plays directly into last year's very eventful WrestleMania in Philadelphia, where Drew knocked off a vulnerable Seth Rollins for the world title on night 2 of the WrestleMania weekend with hubris and a massive chip on his shoulder to finally win a title in front of a live crowd, carrying the WWE as a babyface fighting champion during the no fans era, now holding a championship as a resentful heel and winning it in a stadium, and mocking his injured adversary CM Punk, who was at commentary, getting on the commentary table itself, only for Punk to trip out his feet from underneath him and launch into a post-match brawl. Yes, that was a mistake. Even Punk, who wasn't cleared to compete but brawled with Drew, was shocked when Senior Money in the Bank Damian Priest rushed to the ring to cash in on a prone and depleted McIntyre, quickly souring what was supposed to be his defining WrestleMania moment. Drew doesn't forget, and Drew does not forgive. Yes, most of his 2024 was spent warring with CM Punk, but the logical connections to 2025's WrestleMania season are all present for revenge and resilience. And this was played up in the Royal Rumble if you weren't paying attention there either. They mash at the Clash of the Castle, yes, in 2024, with Damian Priest as the world champion for a bit. But McIntyre was really dealing with CM Punk, who cost him the title in Scotland. Yes, it was all about Punk and Drew last year. That was one of the best feuds of the year. But this year, it's about Drew settling an untied knot with Damian Priest. On the March 21st episode of SmackDown, in front of a raucous crowd in Europe, Priest would tag with Jimmy Uso, while Drew would team with Shinsuke Nakamura. The match was energized by a live deprived of wrestling crowd in Europe, but despite the energy and a losing effort, the post-match scene belonged to the Scottish psychopath, who was, well, psychopathic. Drew blasted Damian with his arm raised, screaming off mic in a way that made you pay attention to the words he was saying on sight every time, claiming he would be on Damian like this because he cost him a title match at WrestleMania. Because of you, I'm not. This is all I got. Drew understands that his attainable prize is not a championship at WrestleMania, but unfiltered, spiteful, indulgent revenge, which has been a driving characteristic of his character since turning heel a few years ago. This post-match scene does not reinvent the wheel of wrestling storytelling, we're not claiming that it is, but it does do something. It makes sense. That entire scene makes sense. All of it makes sense. All of it delivered with the gusto and muscle bravado of two very capable, talented performers heading into the biggest show of the year. So why is such a match not feeling as big as it maybe should? The fairly lazy internet hot take on this that isn't that hot is that it's a nothing match. This is a nothing match. Yeah, I can feel your knuckles drag on the floor before you go to type that. And it's a soft serve ice cream take. Just crank the lever and say the thing you heard someone else say. Drew and Damian are not soft serve. Is it kind of underwhelming for this stage going into it? Yeah, maybe, but does it make sense as a story? Oh yeah. It's not nothing, it's certainly something, it's just not the thing at WrestleMania. And it's a problem when those circumstances tie together, especially when you consider that Drew McIntyre had one of the best years of his career in WWE in 2024. Has that momentum for a major main event match been sustained? He may have been a world champion for a hot minute, but his feud with CM Punk was by far the thing of the year for WWE. And it made Drew McIntyre one of the best villains in all of professional wrestling. In 2023, it was a prelude to what we saw in the heel turn happening towards the end. 2024, the bar was raised, and Drew McIntyre became a high-level, character-driven player in WWE. It felt like a year that Drew McIntyre truly evolved into maybe the most defined, pristine version of himself in WWE, even after being on the losing side of that rivalry with CM Punk. He didn't seem worse off by any means. He felt like a bigger name coming out of it. The logical next step was for him to return and target the Bloodline. He had been saying their name for quite some time. After all, it was the OG Bloodline that prevented him from winning the Universal Championship in Wales at Clash at the Castle back in 2022. I gotta give it to Triple H and his creative team. It means a lot when they keep tying all of those loose ends with long-term storytelling. The fact that Drew does not forget the transgressions and cheating plotted against him when he was a fan favorite now motivates him as Boo McIntyre. See what I did there? I'm so clever. I changed the Drew to Boo because he's a bad guy. You get what I'm doing. Yeah, it was all going well until for some reason the storyline with him going after the Bloodline was dropped. Yeah, he had an argument with Solo Sikoa, who failed to live up to his word and take out Roman Reigns. As soon as Elimination Chamber came in around Toronto, the direction changed entirely. Suddenly, the Bloodline Hunter McIntyre thing was no more. Maybe just some connective tissue to get McIntyre inside the Elimination Chamber. He has been eating roll-up after roll-up loss. Yes, those aren't devastating losses. And his momentum feels just less than, maybe just dissipating since that big program with CM Punk. And maybe, just maybe, or absolutely, that's just the circumstances we're in. It's not all doom and gloom, but the fact is, after the year he had, Drew McIntyre, undoubtedly, in the eyes of many fans, deserves to be in one of the main events of this year's WrestleMania. But not everyone gets exactly what they deserve, especially at WrestleMania. And there are loud, but maybe not the majority of fans who have astronomical, irrational expectations for what should and should not be on WrestleMania. And isn't that healthy fan debate just a part of the daily 24/7 cycle of consuming internet wrestling stuff online? Whether it was against Gunther or even Roman Reigns, McIntyre should be competing in a top-tier match. Not a match that just feels like it's there, even though it has a storyline behind it, because WrestleMania is not just a card that needs to be filled. It needs to feel like the biggest show of the year. Again, it isn't a meaningless storyline to itself. When you look at the past year he had, Drew and Damian Priest have had multiple instances of crossing paths and costing each other big moments. McIntyre was one of the biggest reasons why Priest couldn't cash in the Money in the Bank briefcase earlier before he got to do it at WrestleMania 40. And of course, you have the Clash at the Castle where he lost to Priest. It's all there. It's in context and the timing of it all. Damian Priest deserves to be in a good match too, but unlike McIntyre, he actually had his time to shine as a World Heavyweight Champion for a solid 4 months before the Ring General Gunther dethroned him. And while it's true only a few superstars can get the spots for major WrestleMania matches, it's not unfair to argue that Drew is more deserving for the world title than maybe Jey Uso. But hey, are you hearing these people when Jey Uso comes out? Yes, they're loud and they buy merchandise. Those metrics matter. So in those circumstances, with John Cena, The Rock, and other characters coming back into the fold and maybe a shuffle about, Drew McIntyre doesn't get maybe what Drew McIntyre deserves. Let us know if you think Drew McIntyre deserves better. As always, thanks for watching, and let us know what you think in the comments below.